In today's video, I'm going to be picking up where I left off on my woodshed build. And that means adding some extra support up above here by building a floor or an attic for wood storage, for which I can stand on and then more easily access the roof when I get to the point where I'm gonna be building that. And then I'm gonna also work on adding some bracing throughout for extra support. So I'm looking forward to getting to work on this, and it's gonna be beautiful weather this week, like mid 70s, not too hot, not too cold, just absolutely perfect. This is one of my favorite times of the year. I like fall the best, but this is pretty good too. So let's get to it. All right, so to build this attic floor, what I did first is stand the ladder up, make some marks where each one of the joists is going to go, centered with the woodshed and equally spaced apart from each other. And now I'm going to cut this little block here. I'm very excited because this is a brand new blade. I've been using the same blade for a long time. I like to use those blades until there's just absolutely nothing left. And when I put a new one on, it cuts like butter, so that was a really nice feeling. But now I'm gonna use this little block as a template piece. That's what I need. So I kicked this thing off by showing you me putting these two boards up here, this one and this one. And what those do is rest on top of each one of these beams, 1, 2, and then this one over here. So I'll take my little contraption here and I'll put it up against this mark right here that I made, and then butt it right up against that. Okay, finished the fine tuning. Let's check. Pretty dang close. Yeah, I think that'll work right there. First one's usually the ugliest, and that doesn't look too bad. So I just have a lot more of those to do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. 7 times 4 is 28. Oh God. 28, 27 more to go. These middle ones here have been a little bit tougher to figure out because this is in the way, so I can't use this board and put it across all 3 beams like I have been, because it just hits that right there. So what I've been doing is using this level after I get this one in here, get this level here, make a mark, and then chisel it out and put this one in. That's what I did for all 1, 2, 3, 4 of those ones. All right, I got all those brackets on there on all the beams. That's what it looks like here now. And the reason I chose those specific brackets is because they were the cheapest ones that would get the job done at Home Depot. I want to say they were like 68 cents a piece. So that's what I'm going to use to hold up the joists. Now, the joists are going to be made out of these old deck boards. I talked about that before in a previous video, but I'll go into more detail now. I got those for free from my neighbor Joel, who was tearing apart his old deck. Now, they are free because they are definitely not in perfect condition. They are very, very old. They got a lot of rot in them. But my neighbor Paul told me about them, and I took a look, and I think they are going to work great for what I'm using them for, which is nothing super structural. I mean, it is going to hold up this little floor thing, but I'll pick the best ones for the joists, and then the deck boards are literally just a surface that can hold stuff, so it doesn't need to be really nice, and they were free, so they're gonna work great. I'm really thankful to Joel for giving them to me. He was just gonna, he's trying to get rid of them. He's just gonna throw them away if he couldn't find someone to take them. So thank you to Paul for helping me haul them up here and pick them out. He used some for his woodshed also. He's got a woodshed with a lean-to, and he built a little floor off the side of his. So really awesome to get all that stuff. Check it out. Got some joists for my attic floor here. Now I just need to go down and cut all of the deck boards and lay them on here, screw them in. So this is what that 45-degree angle cut is for. That's going to ensure that these deck boards sit flush against this beam on the side here on both sides. And it's going to take me a very long time to cut each one of these, because I think each one is going to have to be measured and cut individually, because those side beams are not straight. As I keep saying, on this entire woodshed build, everything is unstraight. So yeah, time consuming this will be. Check it out, I can stand up here now. Pretty cool. Now the next thing I'm gonna do is add a bunch of blocking everywhere and some more bracing as well. I'm going to use this string just like I did when I put these rafters up here, and make sure all these blocks go right down the center of the ridge beam here. Don't you know? All right, those look nice and straight with the string. Now, when it comes time to put the purlins on, which is going to be on the top here, I'm going to start with this top purlin. That's where the cedar shakes to nail to. It's going to butt right up against the edge of these 2x6 blocks here. So very important for them to be nice and straight. And by the way, each one of these blocks has 1, 2, 3, and 4 screws in it. So they are in there very, very good. It's not moving. So now I got all these blocks put in on both sides at the bottom. So those are going to be the braces for the main posts that hold up the woodshed. And on the first one, I messed up the first cut, but then I figured it out after going over to the woodshed, holding it up. I was like, nope, that's not right. And then I proceeded to cut the rest of them. So these are going to go right here, something like that. But the notches are going to be really difficult to make.
Decisions that aren't just money-based, you know what I mean?
So before I even put the screws in this, it was really in there tight. As you guys could see, I had to hammer the crap out of that just to get it in place in those notches. But I really wanted to use that style of notching and braces. I don't know what you call that, but it is very, very secure. Much better than what I did up there. But that ridge beam is so small, the logs are small, those braces are small, so that's really held together just by those 6-inch timber screws, which are really strong. So up there, the way that I did it, just cutting it flat 45-degree angle and just placing it on the logs, I'm fine with that. But down here, this is the main beams, and just by putting that one in right there, when I push on this whole thing like barely moves at all. So by the time I get all 6 of them put in there, this woodshed is going to be very, very secure. Now, unfortunately, the first one is always the ugliest. Like, that is off. And then I went way too deep with the chainsaw right there, so that looks terrible. But that's why I started all the way back there, and I'm gonna work my way this way so that by the time I reach the front of the woodshed, hopefully those will be the prettiest ones. So yesterday I spent all afternoon putting those two little braces up there, and it was very demoralizing because the end result was just not what I was looking for. This one isn't too bad, but it took me so long to do and so much energy, and this one is just like, yeah, those chainsaw marks suck really bad. So I'm going to finish those eventually, but what I really feel like I need right now is an easy win. So I'm gonna go up above and work on installing the purlins, and I think that's gonna make me feel better because I have an exact plan for how to execute that, and I think it's going to work really, really well. And I think that's gonna make me feel better, and it's gonna be like a win, a victory for myself, and that's what I really need right now. So let's do that and then see how I feel after that. Just one more song. All right, well that did make me feel good. I'm feeling victorious. That all worked out as well as it could have, I guess. Got the first 2 rows of purlins on. Now I'm gonna go ahead and screw in all those blocks because I haven't done that yet. I thought maybe one of these purlins would line up right with that and I could use it as a straight edge to make all those straight, but I'm just gonna run a string. Make all those straight, screw them in place, and then continue on with the purlins. But I've only got 2 of these 2x2s. So as I said in the previous video, I think I'm gonna rip the 2x4s that I used for bracing earlier on in the process, and I'll create the purlins that I need to finish. All right, slight change in plans. I made a trip to town and I bought some 2x2s. I made a major miscalculation when I was figuring out the purlins. I must have not done the math for 12-inch spacing like I'm doing now. I think at one point I was thinking of making them further apart. I guess that's the only way I can think that I was so off with my calculations. So even if I ripped those 2x4s, it wasn't going to be enough. So I'm just like, you know what, I gotta drive to town and I gotta get lumber. So that's what I did, but it's gonna be worth it because I'm gonna stop by the store, get some food stuff, and you know, make it a town day anyways. So it's all good.
Your Australian accent comes back heavily. How bad do you want money? Throwing more money than I'm making now, because the gambling apps have so much money out of the where's the guy who's like, I already have $200 million. Let me start my own company. I look at everything what they believe is right when it's not profitable. Why about me and call me names? I'm gonna do what I think is right for me. You could say, oh, the reason people are doing all this bad stuff is because they're poor. It doesn't work that way. So if you notice, I'm trying to be more patient, where I do my best.
I am now inside the cabin, obviously, and I'm very tired, But what you just saw is the extent of the progress that I was able to make on the woodshed for this week. Here's some footage of me just walking around, showing what it looks like right now as I sit here. I got all the purlins up, and I was unable to get any more of the bracing done on the bottom. I just got those two. The rest are going to have to wait until later. The next step in this process is going to be completing the shingles. I've got that stack out there of the older cedar that I got from Al, so I need to process all of that. And then Al and I are going to go back to that cedar tree and harvest the rest of it. And we'll see if all that material is enough to cover the roof completely. And if it's not, I'm going to add a skylight, but I'm going to wait until I've got all my shingles made, like I've exhausted all resources, and I'm like, all right, this is all the shingles that I could get. Will this cover the whole thing? And if I'm, it depends on how many square feet short I am, I'll just frame in between rafters a little window. I'm pretty confident that I can do it pretty easily, and it'll be leak free. Nothing's easy, but I got the plans in my head and I think I can do it. So I've edited the video that you guys just watched up until this point, and upon watching it, I made some notes for myself on things that I wanted to clarify after watching it. Why not put the floor joists in the other direction? When I was building the floor, I knew that I had those 16-foot long boards that I got from Joel and Paul, and ideally I would have just been able to lay them 16-foot long across the top and just screw them in. But the way that the beams are, and then the way that the joists would have to go, I would have needed to screw them perpendicular to the way that I did do it. But there was nothing, the beams on that side are too small to fasten to. So the obvious choice was the way that I did them. But then I, had to put all the deck boards this way, and then deal with, cutting the 45-degree angle. So it's kind of a pain. It's hard to explain all this stuff, and unless you're standing here and I could explain it to everybody, then you'd be like, oh yeah, I see why you did it that way. Not to say that there wasn't a way that I could have done it differently, but that's just the way that my brain works. I ended up doing it that way, and I ended up cutting into the beams and doing the whole bracket thing. I could have, I think it's called hewed the beams flat and then screwed a board across the entire beam, and then use that to put the joists onto instead of making those little tiny notches for each bracket. That was another idea that popped through my head. And those 45-degree angle cuts, I think, are actually that is another reason. Okay, because the way that they lay flat now against the beam that goes this way, again, this is hard to explain, but so I put those two braces up, right? The ones that I'm not super happy with, but they're going to be there. And then I'm going to put more going the other way. So there's going to be braces all the way around the base. But when I put those in, they're going to make contact with the flat bottom of those deck boards that make up the floor. I don't know why I'm trying to explain it here. Maybe you'll see it later. It'll work out. Something I said before, when I was making the handrail, I made notches in order to make the top and bottom rail of the handrail. And I had to make more notches in these posts to put the braces up. And one of the obvious things that come to mind is dude, you're weakening the post by cutting into it. But as I said before, I'm only cutting into it just a little bit. There's still a big amount of post left over, so it's still very stable. That goes for the posts and the beams going across. At least in my opinion, they're still very, very strong. I'm no engineer, but I think it's all right, the amount of notching that I made. Something I didn't go into detail a lot is the spacing and how I did the purlins. So I started at the top, because, as I've said a million times now, that ridge beam is a very straight line that goes right down the center of the woodshed. I've tried to make it super straight using the string throughout this entire process, so everything up there at the top is very, very straight. So that's why I started with the purlin at the very top, got that as straight as possible, and then from there, I measured off for every single one, and I decided to go all the way to the bottom first. I thought that was going to be important, but it really ended up not being. I could have went 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, but instead I went all the way to the bottom and then worked my way up to the top. But they are equally spaced, 12 inches apart. The roof itself is 16 foot long, so I actually didn't have to do any cutting at all, except for like the first couple. I thought I had to do some cutting, and now one of them is kind of short, but I just found the center rafter and then put an 8 foot over here and then an 8 foot over here, and there's a little bit of an overhang on the ends. But when I do the shingles, once they're all done, or maybe like before I get to the edge, I don't know quite how I'm going to do it yet, but I'll just run probably snap a line and just cut them off clean at the ends. But I'll get more into the details of the purlins when it comes time to install the shingles. Something I just remembered that I forgot to say was I covered everything out there with plastic and tarps, all of my firewood and the cedar bolts, because it's supposed to rain tonight. That's another reason why I decided to wrap things up the way that I did. If it was going to be dry tomorrow, I may have tried to finish the bracing before completing this video, but it's supposed to downpour, and so I figured this was a good time to stop, get everything covered up, protected. It's gonna be like 3 days of rain, but that's gonna be perfect opportunity for me to work inside the garage, finish those shingles that are out there underneath the tarp, and then once the sun comes out later next week, Al and I can go out, if he's available, and go work on getting the rest of that cedar tree. And that's about it. That's all the notes that I took. And shoot, as you know, I could go on and on. There's a lot more, but I'm working on a headache right now, and I would like that to go away. And I don't think talking is helping. So I really appreciate you guys checking this one out. Next week, like I said, working on more shingles, going out with Al to get more. And we'll see what happens. I appreciate you guys. I think I already said that, but it's very true. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys on the next one. Thanks.